In the wake of the attacks in Paris, the expected questions are being raised about how a plan of this size could have been missed by intelligence services. And some U.S. officials are telling reporters that NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden is partly to blame, arguing that his disclosures about the NSA's operations have given terrorists the tools to communicate undetected. Are you surprised that Snowden has somehow become a part of what just happened in Paris?
I'm not surprised at all, and that's true principally for two reasons. The first one is if you think about who's actually trying to convince people to blame him, it's current and former officials at the CIA, the NSA, and other government agencies. And if you think about their predicament, these are people who receive billions and billions of dollars every year in American taxpayer money and have been vested with enormously radical authorities, everything they've asked for essentially. And they have only one mission, and their mission is to find terror plots. And so when they fail miserably in their job and dozens of people die, as just happened in Paris, of course, they're petrified that people are going to look to them and say, why did you fail in your job? And so what they want to do is they want to point the finger at other people and say, oh, don't think about us. Don't look at us. Don't ask why we failed, no matter, even though we have all this money. Look over there at Edward Snowden. It's his fault. Or look at Apple and Google. It's their fault for providing encryption. It's everybody's fault but our own. So that's the first reason I'm not surprised. And the second reason I'm not surprised is that in every single case where there's a whistleblower, the U.S. government tries to demonize them by saying exactly the same things. If you go and look at what Nixon officials said about Daniel Ellsberg, who is now widely regarded as a hero, they said, oh, Daniel Ellsberg is probably a Soviet spy. He gave these documents and others to the Kremlin before he released them through the New York Times, and he's responsible for the death of American service members. So you have a lot of people who are just like little Nixon henchmen who repeat the same smears about any whistleblower, including Edward Snowden, and so I'm not surprised for that reason either.
Well, in your piece, you also lay out some very specific examples of officials for years prior to any Snowden leaks out there saying that it is increasingly becoming difficult to track terrorists and their communications. Give us some of those examples now.
Well, aside from the fact that this is what officials always do, it is unbelievably irrational for anyone to believe this accusation that the reason they didn't find these terrorists is because Edward Snowden taught them how to evade surveillance. There's two reasons why that's true, and there's tons of evidence for it. First of all, think about how many large-scale terrorist attacks have been successfully perpetrated well before anyone ever heard the name Edward Snowden. There was the 2002 bombing in Bali. There was the 2004 massacre in the Madrid train, the 2005 London train bombing, the 2008 mass shooting spree in Mumbai, the April 2013 attack on the Boston Marathon, all of which involved multiple perpetrators engaging in a plot and plotting without being detected and without being stopped. So if you're somebody who wants to blame Edward Snowden for allowing the Paris attackers to plot without being detected, how do you explain how all these other people who perpetrated all these other complicated plots long before Snowden were able to do that? But secondly, and the much more important point, is that the premise of this accusation is that before Edward Snowden, terrorists were really stupid. They were really helpful. What they would do is they would plot on unencrypted email lines or using telephone lines that the U.S. government could eavesdrop on. And only once Edward Snowden came along did they know then to start using encryption or to avoid telephones. That's the claim that's being made. And the proof that that accusation, that claim is an absolute lie are multiple media documents from 10 years, 15 years before Edward Snowden ever emerged. There's a USA Today article in February of 2001 where the FBI is saying Al-Qaeda uses very sophisticated encryption to hide their communications, and that's why we're not able to track them.